Good morning and welcome to another edition of Summit. Today we turn our focus to a landmark Supreme Court decision that has stirred intense debate across Nigeria's political and legal landscape. The court affirmed that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has constitutional power to declare a state of emergency. Supporters of the All Progressives Congress say that the ruling strengthens constitutional authority and equips the government to respond swiftly to national crisis. Critics, on the other hand, argue that it expands executive powers in ways that could threaten federalism, civil liberties, and democratic checks and balances. And at a time when Nigerians are grappling with insecurity, economic pressure, and questions about the resilience of our democracy, this judgment raises one fundamental question. Does it safeguard the nation, or does it place too much power in the office of the president or the executive? Today, I have joining me someone who's very conversant with national issues and all the happenings in Nigeria. And so we'll be looking at the risk and what this portends for Nigeria's democracy. I have joining with me on the program this morning a public affairs analyst. He's also a media and communications consultant. So you see that he's very apt. Mr. Ademola Adegoke. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the program.
The
you look quite rested, I must say.
Thank you for
you
that.
Had a good night's sleep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, madam.
All right, so for our viewers who may not be legally inclined, and updated on happenings in the country, can you briefly explain what the Supreme Court affirmed, with that judgment, saying that regarding the president's power to declare a state of emergency, just an overview of what it's about.
Yes. I think let's get the right background to this judgment. Earlier in the year, I think precisely in March of this year, because of the crisis in Rivers State, the president invoked the provision of Section 305 of the Constitution and declared a state of emergency. And part of the measures, or part of the outcome of the state of emergency, of the declaration of the state of emergency, was the suspension of both the governor, his deputy, and the state, the members of the State House of Assembly for a period of 6 months. And so when that was done, there was this debate that, yes, the Constitution does grant the president the power to declare state of emergency, but does that include suspension? Some people were saying removal, but removal is not the right word, because it's just for a period of time. And so the president declared that state of emergency for 6 months and suspended those elected officials. And then some people felt that that was not right. And then the PDP governors, led by, I think, Adamawa State governor, 11 or 12 of them, their number has been seriously depleted now, they went to court. And then they approached the Supreme Court to give the right interpretation to the section to that section 305. And the Supreme Court yesterday now affirmed that the president truly does have the power to take the measure he took, because the Constitution had stated the controversial clause of the Constitution that people did not, or people are not so comfortable with, is the part that says that the president shall take extraordinary measures during the state of emergency. And there are, a school of thought is of the opinion that extraordinary measures could include anything. It could include anything. But the other opposing side felt that no, that should not include the suspension of elected officials. But the Supreme Court, in its wisdom yesterday, sat by a majority decision of 6-1, ruled that the president truly has the power to suspend elected officials as he did. So that is the background.
All right, so in your view, does this decision or this ruling strengthen constitutional order or expose gaps in Nigeria's constitutional safeguards?
You see, I want to be as
very objective,
careful, as possible in this. Yes, there are I would say that there are constitutional gaps, but at the same time, we also need to look at our own peculiarities as a nation. You understand? We need to look at our peculiarities as a nation. And people, for me, I am of the opinion that even though democracy is globally desirable for good governance, so to speak, but then we also need to realize that no two democracies are exactly the same, because the social milieu, the cultural background, the historical and cultural backgrounds are not the same. And so we need to situate even democratic values within our own space, within our own ecosystem. So we need to do that. Otherwise, if we want to say we want to equate our own democratic practice with that of other nations, we may be making a mistake. So yes, the Constitution, there are definitely, this is not even the only gaps, that we, in our Constitution, or ambiguity, you understand? But for me, I want, I say this without any, I do not have any political affiliation. So away from a political affiliation, away from, strict adherence to judicial textualism, as I would say, I think we need to really look at the realities of our situation. And the realities of our situation is that, our nation being so diverse, you understand, culturally, historically, and even politically, we need to really evolve a system that we act as a check, as a safety fuse, to the system. And I think this is one safety fuse, that the Constitution has made provision for in our system. It's a safety fuse. So that in moments of crisis, rather than the whole nation, conflagrating, the safety fuse, brings tension down. And for what you may say, for whatever anybody may want to say, you cannot deny the fact that the president's action in March this year actually doused tension in Rivers State, because as we speak, imagine what will have happened. You understand? Don't forget that as at the time the president took that action, the president did not just arrive at that action. One, the State House of Assembly could not sit because they could not sit properly, even though they were not, Then the House of Assembly had been demolished by the governor. The budget of the whole state was passed by 3 members of the House of Assembly. You understand? You don't want to call that democracy. Don't want to call that out of, in a House of 31 members, the governor was running with 3, and they passed the budget. So for me, those are inanities, those are oddities that should not be allowed. And, to cap it all, the Supreme Court of the land now ruled that there was no governance in Rivers State. And as at the time the president was going to take that decision, don't forget that pipelines, were being blown up. So does the president fold his arms and watch the whole, because if that situation in Rivers State had been left, unchecked, and again, the governor was on the verge of being impeached. If the governor had been impeached, of course, there wouldn't be peace in Rivers State. And thank God that the governor himself now realized and said, oh, the president saved him from being impeached. So away from, strict adherence to judicial textualism and political and emotional and attachment to, party loyalty and all of that, away from all of that, if you want to look at this, fair-mindedly, I want to believe that our whole system actually needs this kind of safety fuels. The only question will be its application, the maturity, the statesmanship that will be involved in its application. But that we do not need this type of safety fuels, we do.
All right, so one other issue in our political space that's been causing a lot of fears is the issue of state police. Because people fear that the governors will use that power, to cause more disquiet in their states. Now, when we bring this same issue to this court judgment, Supreme Court judgment, what do you think about its meaning for our federal structure and the autonomy of states? Because that's a big fear now.
No, for me, you see, I have said it's the application. And again, what you just need to do is to ensure that there are enough checks. There are enough constitutional checks. And one of the constitutional checks that the Constitution provides for this type of for declaration of emergency rule is that it has to be approved by the National Assembly. Maybe we can think of other checks, other measures, that we can insert into our Constitution so that power will not be abused.
Especially because we've been talking of restructuring. We've been talking about power devolution from the center.
From the center.
Yeah, exactly. So don't you have this same fear that this power is being increased instead of devolved?
You see,
that's the fear I'm talking about.
You see, I am also of the opinion. I have that fear, but that's why I'm talking of insertion of more checks. But then we also need to ask ourselves, you understand, what is the purpose of governance? This democracy that we talk about, is it an end in itself or a means to an end? So when people say, the democracy is being threatened and all of that, I would also want to say that we need to also ask ourselves, what is democracy? Does the democracy exist just for itself and itself alone? It is to be used. It is to be used for good governance, for peace, for social order and general well-being of the people. You understand? If democracy is not achieving that, you understand, whatever that we can do to ensure that it achieves that. For example, the instances I cited about the governor using 3 members out of the 31 members of the assembly to pass the budget. Is that democracy? The governor going to pull down the House of Assembly. Is that democracy? One man in the state, you understand, plotting, one man, plotting and scheming to remove the governor. Is that democracy? You understand? So these are issues. So if the president now felt that, things are going out of hand, and I think extraordinary measures need to be taken. You understand? For me, I don't have any issue with that. Talking about autonomy, of course, the Constitution also states, clearly, the limits, the frontiers of powers of the state and the federal government. And there have been situations too in this country, this same Supreme Court, you understand, there have been situations that the federal government took some steps and the Supreme Court, said, no, you can't do that. A very good point of reference was during Obasanjo regime, when the federal government withheld the allocation to Lagos State because of the creation of LCDAs, Local Council Development Authority. And Lagos State went to court. And of course, the Supreme Court ruled in its favor that no, you can't do this. Your decision was null, void, and not reversed. So for me, we just need, yes, there could be possible abuse of these powers. But for me, it still does not remove the fact that ours is a very complex situation. And you see, they say critical problems also, require, critical solutions. So for me, what the Supreme Court has affirmed, you understand, is for me a way of, is a way of upholding societal peace, you understand, societal order, stability, political stability, and, general well-being of the people. The only fear that, and I say, is a justifiable fear that people have, is that will it be, rightly used without being abused? And in this instance, I believe that the president, in this same instance, the president, for me, by my own assessment, the president was fair enough because he saved the governor from being removed. And don't forget that even though Wike was a minister under him, Wike was not happy. Wike did not know that the president was going to take this action, because as for Wike, it was a done deal, fait accompli, that the governor will be removed. But the president, on whose table the buck stops, felt that if this is done, Rivers will not know peace. And if Rivers does not know peace, there is no way the rest of the nation will not be affected. So the president took that decision. And for me, like I've said, away from legal rhetorics, away from party loyalty and all of that, I believe that our system needs something like this.
All right, still talking about the fears. You said something about the National Assembly being able to check, maybe the excesses that this code create in our political system. Now, talking about the National Assembly, this National Assembly, people see them as rubber stamp, allegedly, or whatever.
Yeah. That's the perception.
So do you see them being able to play this role of being a check, to be able to ensure that this judgment or this Supreme Court's decision is, there's no play to the gallery, everything is run appropriately?
It's so sad to say that even after 25 or 26 years of democratic rule, we can still say that our system is still evolving. And maybe, it's still a young democracy, because when you compare with other, much older democracies of the world. So our system is still evolving. And one hopes to see that day that, we will have true representatives of the people in the National Assembly that will be able to really act as the voice of the people, and that will act without, true to their conscience, without blind adherence to or allegiance to party loyalty. The present National Assembly may not be doing, or may not be meeting our own expectation. But then that is what we have for now. I believe that this system, like I've said, it is an evolving one. And I know that we will get to that point, that the National Assembly should be able to truly act as a check, on the excesses or possible excesses of the executive. But what you just need to have is to once the constitutional provisions are there, you understand, we may not be really meeting the expectation as we should now. But I believe that once those provisions are there, someday we will get there. But to not have it at all will be a big problem. The National Assembly, yes, people view them as a rubber stamp, but I think they still, at least once in a while, they come up and do their job the way it should be done. So,
all right, thank you. All right, so let me go back to Rivers State. The reason the president declared a state of emergency and suspended the governor for 6 months was because of was to tackle the issue of security. And also governance, to prevent governance breakdown. Yeah. So we have other states in Nigeria that are not secure at the moment, and it looks like the governors are overwhelmed with issues of insecurity that's ongoing there. Now, does this ruling will this ruling improve Nigeria or the president's ability to respond to crisis in those other regions?
Well, don't forget that even you see, for me talking about security now, don't forget that during Jonathan regime, a state of emergency was declared on ground of security. I think in Adamawa and Borno then, and without the elected officials being suspended. And the reason is that he didn't see those elected officials as being part of the problem.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay. So that's the difference.
That's the difference.
To show us the difference.
Yeah, yes.
No? Okay.
In the case of Rivers, you understand, the people suspended were,
the problem.
They were part, they were the real dramatic personnel, in the whole crisis. So there is no way you will remove them, you will declare state of emergency and you leave them, the problem will still persist. So it is so, even though, the president is not all the time, and this is where we talk, that's why we talk about, maturity and statesmanship in the execution of the powers granted by the Constitution. Yes, the president, this kind of ruling could give the president, powers to take measures. But it is not all the time that he now has to remove elected officials. So even though the governors in those troubled states are overwhelmed, like you have said, but we need to now ask, are they part of the problem? If they are not part of if, for example, now the president has enough intel to say that this governor is the one fueling, and he has indubitable proof, to show that, well, he may do that. But if he doesn't have, what will be his justification for doing that? What will be his reason? So he can. So for me, like I've said, we also that is why the issue of checks will still be applicable here, because if the president declares that he's going to declare state of emergency and removes the governor of Niger State, for example, the question will be, what has he done? What has he done? Because security, we know, largely is in the hands of the federal government. The police, owned by the federal government, we still have, the mono policing system until we have, you made reference to state police the other time, but we don't yet have it. So security is largely in the hands of the federal government, and then so you cannot remove any governor that because there is security, there is insecurity in the state, you want to remove, you want to suspend him. So I think, and even if the president wants to do that, it will not be left, to the National Assembly to agree or disagree with him. So this, for me, is the issue. Okay,
so talking about getting a balance to this issue now, still talking about checks. I like the fact that you use that word checks because it's kind of driving this conversation. Now, as a matter of checks, do you think there should be constitutional amendments or clearer guidelines to define when and how emergency rules can be applied?
It is not out of place. Yeah. It is not out of place.
As a way forward.
Yeah, it is not out of place for the Constitution to be specific. You understand? It is not out of place so that it is not subject to subjective interpretation. You understand? It is not out of place to have that. But for us to remove it completely will also be dangerous, because if this clause had not existed in the Constitution, only God knows where Rivers State and perhaps the whole nation will be now. So for me, yes, we can have better. So
that's the direction the National Assembly should be going now.
Yeah. So for me, we should, like I've said, we need to look at the peculiarities of our whole situation. Our democracy is still evolving.
All right. So in the last word on this issue, the people, civil societies, and all, what should we be doing now? Should we be happy? Should we press for more?
Yeah.
Or what should we be doing now?
Yeah,
concerning this ruling.
The general saying is that the biggest room in the world is that of improvement. Is the room for improvement. So we can always improve our system. We can always strengthen our democracy in diverse ways that we think, that we deem, best for the system. So we cannot say, so we will continue to press for more. Yeah. We will continue to look for ways to strengthen our democracy, our democratic culture, so that, we will get to our desired destination, someday.
All right, so in conclusion, you are saying that the real test now is in how this power is exercised,
and the checks,
restrained, and held accountable.
And now, that is it.
By the people.
By the people and their representatives. And their representatives, which in that wise we are talking about the legislators.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir. That's a good place to conclude this conversation. So let's just watch and see how it all goes. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine, as always.
All right. So